We're talking about saying yes to freedom. In honor of Juneteenth, our Get Your Yes On segment today is dedicated to freedom. I'm Reverend Deborah Johnson, RevD. When we think about freedom, we need to think about it in two different ways. There's freedom from, but there's also freedom to. And no matter what it is that we're trying to get away from or to be free from, that desire to get away can only take us so far. That we're not going to really be able to make that shift until whatever it is that we're trying to move towards becomes so incredibly compelling that it pulls us right over the top. We may be wanting to be free from alcoholism, but it's the freedom to be clean and sober that's that vision that's going to really, really pull us over. With all of the talk now from so many people about thinking that they're not going to vote in the 2024 presidential election because they don't like their choices for one position on the whole entire ballot. And I think to myself, I wonder how the first freed slaves felt. I wonder how excited they were about what choices were on the ballot. And why would someone who was a slave, finally freed from that institution, even want to participate in the very institution that had them enslaved? I think it's because they knew something. I think it's because they knew that they didn't want to just be free from slavery. They wanted the freedom to fully participate. As property, they had no rights. They could make no decisions. They had no agency. They could not influence their surrounding. And I think that somehow or another that they really understood that if they were to truly exercise their freedom, it meant more than not just being masses' property, but it meant showing up and using their voice, creating some political generational wealth. You know, most of these freed slaves were in the agricultural fields. They were in the fields. They were out on the farms. Okay? And they knew something about planting. They knew something about putting seeds in the ground, and you had to tend to it a little while before you actually got the crop, before you actually got the fruits. And I imagine that they understood this about voting as well, that voting was a long-term something, that every time they went to the polls, they put in a few little seeds, but that it was going to take a minute before they got the crop, that they understood that there may not be anybody on the ballot that they wanted now, but if they kept exercising this freedom that they had, that it would get to the point where they had a Stacey Abrams and a Raphael Warnock and a Fonnie Willis in Georgia, you know, where they had a Letitia James and an Alan Bragg and a Hakeem Jeffries in New York. It's because they kept saying to what they were free to do. I want you to think about that. What in your life are you striving to be free from? But if you get that freedom, what are you going to do with it? Hit me up. Share with me your questions, your comments, and what are you doing with your freedom? Happy Juneteenth.